I guess it works out pretty well that this video isn't going to go up on the day that I thought, since now I get to say, Happy Halloween, everybody. The one day a year where you get to see something scarier than my face. Yeah, I know I said I didn't have any Halloween content planned for you guys this year, but I lied. I wanted to surprise you guys. You may know that by now, since I did comment about it on the channel when I realized I wasn't going to have a video up yesterday. My original plan was to post this video in the same slot that my Teen Titans review for this week would have gone in, so that you guys would have still been expecting a video when it went up. I figured as a special treat for you guys, I would do a Raiders of the Story Arc style review of the new Netflix Sabrina series. For those of you who don't know, at least as far as I know, the Raiders of the Story Arc format comes from the Nostalgia Critic. It's a review format where you look at the first few episodes of a series, the episodes which set up the status quo, set the stage for the rest of the series, and then make some judgment about the series based on those episodes alone. In keeping with that format, despite the fact that I have watched past the first 3 episodes of the show, I will only be talking about those first 3 episodes, at least primarily in this review, since they do set the stage for the rest of the show pretty well. For those of you old enough to remember the old Sabrina television show, this is a very different beast. Being someone who doesn't know much about the Sabrina comics, I can't tell you how accurate either show is to the comics. But from what I understand, the old show, even though lore-wise it wasn't really consistent, at least tonally it was. Whereas from what I understand, this show is consistent with the tone of the comics that it's based on, Chilling Tales of Sabrina. A sort of modern reinvention and buoying up of the Sabrina mythos. In this new version of the Sabrina continuity, Sabrina, the teenage witch, she and her family and their entire coven draw their power from satanic magic. But this does not mean that they're necessarily bad people. In fact, Sabrina is quite a good person, always looking out for the people around her, especially her friends and her family. In these 3 episodes, as Sabrina comes upon and then moves past her 16th birthday, the day upon which she is supposed to be baptized into the Church of Night, we meet Sabrina and her aunts Zelda and Hilda, her cousin Ambrose, her familiar Salem, her friends Roz and Susie, and her boyfriend Harvey. The tone of the series is also established immediately as Sabrina announces to us in voiceover dialogue, the very first thing spoken in the entire series, that she lives in the town of Greendale, where it always feels like Halloween. Sounds like my kind of place. And that pretty much describes things. Even at its brightest moments, the show never really feels like it isn't some sort of horror suspense show. Even in moments that aren't really supposed to feel suspenseful, there's still that same sort of air to things. At first, it seems like this entire first season is going to be about Sabrina choosing between joining the Church of Night full-time, keeping her magical powers, and leaving her mortal life behind, or keeping that mortal life and giving up her powers and her long life, the benefits granted to her for being a witch. The 2 worlds are mutually exclusive, Sabrina herself being a rare exception to the rule. Her father was a warlock, a male witch, and her mother was a mortal woman. For some reason that is only starting to become clear many episodes after these first 3, the Dark Lord, Satan himself, made special dispensations for her father to marry a mortal woman. Something which is entirely unheard of in a society where even forming meaningful friendships with mortals is severely frowned upon and could get you kicked out of the church. And it does seem like there's some plot here, because in the 3rd of these 3 episodes, we do learn that even though her father promised Sabrina to the Church of Night when she was very, very young, still a baby, her mother went one day before to have her baptized in a Catholic ceremony, protecting her from being forced to join the church. And while it could be read that her mother had some agenda against her father, that she was betraying him in this moment, I think they were working together to make sure Sabrina didn't join fully. Which brings us to the first interesting twist of these episodes. That's not what the first season's about. The entire first season is not about Sabrina choosing one life over the other. In fact, these first 3 episodes settle that. She's left with the same sort of half and half life she's had up until this point. The church wants her so badly that the high priest of the church is willing to give her this. But the Dark Lord, Satan, sorry, I'm going to laugh every time I say that, I can't help it, is still so hell-bent, pardon the pun, on bending her to his will that he sends, who I'm pretty sure is supposed to be Lilith, the mother of demons, to make sure she does all of these things that he wants her to do. Specific milestones that are important to him, which seem to be in service of bringing about the literal apocalypse, which is pretty interesting, but I'm getting beyond the first 3 episodes, so I'm going to stop there. Point is, this is a very interesting series with very interesting lore. And weirdly enough, I'm actually finding myself wanting to talk and theorize about this show, and maybe I will at some point on this channel. I don't know at this point yet. The first 2 episodes feel more like one coherent episode, with the third sort of feeling an outlier. So I'm going to talk about the first 2 first, and the plot's pretty simple. It's a lot of Sabrina going back and forth, agonizing over this choice, asking different people what she should do, asking for advice, asking for more information on the Church of Night, on what it means to be a part of it, interspersed with scenes of her interacting with her immortal friends and her boyfriend, Harvey, who I mentioned before, giving us a taste of both of the worlds in which she lives, both of these worlds in which she has a foothold, giving us a clear picture of what it is that she might gain by going with the church full-time, but also what she would lose if she made that decision, so that we understand where she's coming from. And while I will say that Roz and Susie, though they're growing on me lately, I didn't really feel it in these early episodes. I didn't really feel any connection to them, so I wasn't able to really empathize with Sabrina in that regard. I really like Harvey. His relationship with Sabrina is just adorable. All of the acting in this show is a little wooden. The dialogue's very declarative. The characters make very absolute statements. It feels like dialogue. It feels like comic book dialogue, honestly. And I kind of feel like that's on purpose. I kind of feel like that it's on purpose to fit the tone of this show, the tone that they're going for. But in spite of these oftentimes wooden performances, whether they're intentional or not, I see a lot of chemistry between Sabrina and Harvey. Scenes with them together are always the highlight of the episode for me, until the spooky stuff starts happening. So in that regard, I get it. I get why she wouldn't want to give this life up. She does have something good with this genuinely good guy who genuinely loves and cares about her, who she genuinely loves and cares about right back. But in the first of these 3 episodes, when she tries to tell him about what she really is, he freaks out. He can't handle it. She has to use magic to take the information back. So she has some pretty decent evidence that she'll never be able to be her complete self with this person, that it's just not possible. And even if she could, is there really a future for them? Her father had to get special dispensation to marry his mortal love interest. Is she going to be able to get the same? Maybe giving up her witch side really is what's best for her, because she will get to keep him and be her full, complete self with him. But she doesn't want to give up the power that comes with being a witch. She's a good person. Like I said before, she wants to help people, and she's able to use these magical powers to do that. We see that in these 3 episodes multiple times. And not only that, but she enjoys doing it. She enjoys having these powers, and why shouldn't she? It's honestly a choice that I don't know if I'd be able to make in her place. The first couple episodes culminate first with a visit from the High Priest of the Church of Night, who tells her all this stuff about how the Church of Satan is about free will, how she'll be able to retain who she is, remain herself, even if she chooses to join the church by signing her name away in the literal devil's book of the beast. And then it culminates further at her baptism, where he says something completely different, that if she signs her name, she will have to submit to the Dark Lord's will. All this time, she's been hearing that her parents, her father in particular, her parents being dead, of course, if you don't know the story, that they wanted her to be part of the church. But then, at the ceremony, she sees a vision of them, and they seem to be warning her not to sign and to run away. So she does, embarrassing her family and bringing an accusation of breach of promise upon herself, something which is antiquated in witch law, but is still valid. And so that's what the 3rd episode is about. In witch law, you are guilty until proven innocent, so she must defend herself and prove that she didn't break a promise to Satan himself. Sorry, I can't help it. One of the major weaknesses about this show is it tries to be super serious about this whole Satanism thing, and yet every time they bring up the Dark Lord or Lucifer or Satan, I laugh because it's just funny. The way they deliver it with such a straight face, in such an offhand way. Sabrina's Aunt Zelda being the main offender in this case, saying praise Satan like all the frickin' time, the same way that somebody would say like praise God or something. It's just goofy to me. I laugh every time I hear it. It's silly. Not to mention that when we actually see the devil the few times that we see him, it's not an unconvincing effect. It's just, he looks kind of goofy. He's not really all that threatening to me, really. So while I can take the show seriously fine, those elements of it I'm having trouble. I'm working on it, but I'm having trouble. That said, she manages to find a mortal lawyer who made a deal with the devil at one point in his life, only to realize that it was a mistake, and then who her father helped, teaching him all about witch law. So he's able to come in and help her to prove that she didn't breach a promise by finding that information that she was baptized in a Catholic ceremony. This leads to her being offered a deal by the court where she gets to keep her mortal life, but also keep her witch life. And she doesn't even have to be baptized. She doesn't even have to sign her name over. It's exactly what she wanted, and it sounds too good to be true because it is, because there are still forces working behind the scenes to manipulate her towards their own end. These are 3 really solid episodes, which do a great job of establishing the lore of this series, the characters and their characterization, and then setting up plot threads which I imagine will run to the end of the season, perhaps even beyond. It's very well written, and I have to wonder if that's because the show itself is well written or because it's just really close to the comics and the comics were well written. In fact, I really want to read the comics now. They seem like they'd be really interesting to me. You guys know at this point that I really like horror imagery, even cheesy horror imagery, even hokey horror imagery. I really get a kick out of it, and this show has plenty of serious horror imagery, cheesy horror imagery, and hokey horror imagery. There's even some stuff in this that's reminiscent of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the greatest show of all time, which is a good thing. But that's not to say that this show doesn't have some weaknesses, too. The wooden dialogue, whether it's intentional or not, whether it's tonal or not, is still a weakness in this show, I think. Not only that, but the young lady who plays Sabrina, I cannot remember her name, I'll try to remember to put it up here. She's not a bad actress, but she isn't a great actress yet either. I see a lot of potential in her, but she's not there yet, and maybe that is in part because of the directing on this show. But there are some times where I just don't believe her performance, but despite that, she has an interesting presence to her. There's a magnetism to her that is worthy of being in this lead role. She just needs to grow into it a little bit more. The young man who plays Harvey, again, I don't remember his name, I'll try to remember to put it up here. He's kind of the same. He's also a little wooden in places where I feel like he shouldn't be, but he's got a charm to him, a charm that the Harvey character is supposed to have, and so I can forgive it. The show is also very melodramatic, which is something that a lot of people are going to be turned off by. I personally love it, but I can see why, objectively speaking, it could be considered a weakness of this series, though I do feel like it is entirely intentional. But its biggest weakness overall is probably the fact that it's part of the absolutely garbage Riverdale universe, the universe in which the CW show Riverdale is set. That show is just trash. I hate it a lot. I'm not going to get into why, but I do, and I absolutely do not like thinking that this show, which I feel is much better, exists in the same continuity. Though the idea that one of the evil witches or demons from this show might one day murder the entire cast of characters from Riverdale does leave me feeling comforted at night, I will admit. Not to mention that if subtext is something that you like out of your entertainment, this series has a lot of not-so-subtle commentary on what one stands to lose if they devote themselves blindly to a religious organization, which is something I can get behind, personally, so there's that, too. Point is, this is a really strong show, but it's a very specific type of show, that I feel a lot of people aren't gonna like, but if you think you are the kind of person who would like this, absolutely go watch it. If you like melodramas or you like hokey horror imagery, then go for it. You'll get a lot out of this show. It's fantastic in those ways. And the characters are just likable. Even Zelda, who's kind of a bitch most of the time, has a charm to her. Though I have to say, so far, my favorite character is Sabrina's cousin Ambrose. He's just a delight whenever he's on screen. I love the guy. The only thing that I feel could have made this show better is if Salem talked like he did in the original Sabrina live-action series, but I guess it wouldn't really fit with the tone of this show, though Salem is kind of a badass in this show, so that's nice. All in all, this is exactly the kind of show that I love to watch, and I'm going to keep watching it, and I will recommend it to you guys on those merits. And for those of you who are maybe uncomfortable with the whole Church of Satan thing being played entirely straight, as in Satan actually exists and actually wants to bring about the apocalypse, it does seem like the show is going in the direction of defeating him, beating him, stopping that from happening, so if that puts you at ease and allows you to watch the show, there you go. All of that said, though, guys, as per usual, I'd love to know, what do you think of Chilling Tales of Sabrina on this fine Halloween evening? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below or over on my Discord, link in the description. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.